Well, g'day everybody. Welcome new subscribers, and g'day to all my existing subscribers and slash friends. And I know it's been a while since I posted a video, but anyway, this is the progress I've made in this. This is the laundry side in my house. I've still got a few things to do, like obviously there's a stud that's got to go, you know, down there and, you know, there kind of thing. I'd love to just cut that off, and you know, I've tied this piece of wood into here ages ago. That's why it's a bit rough, because I was sort of just learning about woodwork. Tied that into there and that to the floor, so it's, you know, pretty solid. And you know, but I need that there because that's sort of holding that top plate of that wall. I was going to put a lot more screws in it, but it's strong, and they're pretty long, wide screws anyway. So I'm going to put a stud between there and there. This is going to be like a storage area, you know, shelves and stuff. I might bring that light switch out to sort of, you know, maybe here or something, you know, so it can be like a, you know, like a lit sort of storage cupboard. But I put in this shower recess. I've still got a, you know, a metric shit ton of work to do. I've used screws with everything. I haven't used any nails because I don't really like nails. They're a pain in the ass. You know, I'm sure I could do better than what I've done, and I'm not running myself down. Don't get the idea that I am, but you know, it's the first time I've done stud framing, so obviously I'd do better next time because I've learnt a lot this time. Now the way I joined the top and bottom plates is with half joints, and I did that because ideally I want another screw in there. No, not that one, but the top one I want another screw or two in the top one. But I did that because I wanted to tie these two together, because there's not really anything but the floor, you know, to you know, this corner here, this particular part of this bottom plate. It's really just, it's tied into that bottom plate of that wall. If this wants to zoom in, so that piece of timber there, you know, it's tied into that bottom plate at the end. Screwed into it, I should say, with big screws. I've got some 10G by 100mm screws going into the joists, which are, you know, which is sort of there for that bottom plate. I got some of those, I think they're 75mm screws there. There are 3 of them. I've tied that top plate into that top plate there, which is a bit split, but that doesn't really matter because I didn't tie it in exactly the way you'd think. But anyway, it's got plenty of screws, and it's pretty sturdy. You know, if I put this camera back here, let's see if I can just sort of get this in frame without the camera falling down and smashing. But it's the whole house sort of shakes around when I do that. I really want to put a couple more screws between this stud and this one. You know, I haven't finished tying in. I got one there. I got one up there, but I really need one, you know, I need a few more because there's just not enough screws. Like between here and sort of there, there's actually a fair bit of distance. So anyway, I've got noggins between these two studs. I think I put 3 between these two, but I only bothered putting 2 noggins, you know, here and here, because it doesn't really need to be, you know, it doesn't need 3 there. That's plenty. So noggins at 1200mm. I had to cut a shim for there because I cut that noggin just a little bit too thin. I also shimmed that out because that stud's, you know, warped and not quite straight. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I got shims in a couple of places. I got some shims up there, and you know, it might look not very good, but you know, if I just zoom back out again, you know, that's not going anywhere. Well, I can't hold the camera still when I do that. So you can sort of see how it's been fabricated. There's something for plaster to sit on all the way around. These gaps, I didn't get rid of these pieces of hardwood. I just filled it in with these blocks. Now I'll go around and I'll show you guys how I've actually attached those blocks. The floor, actually, it's done. So that's replaced and it's nice and sturdy. I've screwed off this part of the old floor. I haven't finished screwing this off. It's a little bit, you know, lifted up a bit. Got a couple of screws there. I've got a couple of screws, but not enough. So the old toilet, because I actually replaced it with a brand newie. temporary cistern because they accidentally gave us 2 of them. I don't know why, but there you go. This is the mini stop for the cistern. You know, it's quite a nice looking valve for $7. This flex hose, and this is why I don't bother using copper lines for this. It's a little bit long. Ideally, I'd have it 350mm, but they don't sell 350mm. They only sell this 400mm line. Yeah, it's 400mm by 8mm. You're probably not going to see that. Oh yeah. So anyway, that's a really neat way of connecting cold water to the cistern. Now, it says on the tag 3 Nm torque setting. Well, I just used my hands. I didn't use a wrench because, you know, 3 Nm is not very much. I'm not happy with the waste because it's on a bit of a slight angle, so I might chop the waste through and just rotate it, you know, 4 degrees. But it's a low flush toilet cistern. Like, you know, you don't get much for your, you know. I jacked up the water level a bit, so it's, you know, this is half flush. You know, you're not putting much water down there, so it's a low volume toilet. Now, why did I replace the whole thing? Because the entire toilet was $97 with the cistern. Now there's a finishing panel here which hides the flush pipe. I'm also not running a flush cone, I'm running a bush. You can see the bush just there. That's a really neat way of doing it. It's a lot nicer than a flush cone, and they don't really deteriorate very often. The hand basin I've lowered at 100mm because I want it to be, you know, a more standardised height. Got to replace the mixer cartridge in here, which is, it's a $30 mixer. There's going to be a soap on it. It's a $30 mixer, but it's got like a plastic cartridge with ceramic discs in it. I'll pull the old cartridge out, take it with me. So there's a Allen grub screw there. Pull the handle off, and the top of it unscrews. That little bit of dress plastic comes off actually. You know, it's a brass fitting, but yeah, that little bit of plastic under there comes off, and then it's got a nut. You undo the nut, pull the cartridge out. $7.50 new cartridge. So, you know, I am not using a cheap mixer in the shower though, because, you know, the shower mix is buried beneath the shower wall plaster and all that, so you really don't want to use a cheap mixer in your shower. You never want to use a cheap mixer in your shower. This is the taps the old shower had, which I haven't got rid of yet. You know, they leak. They're just a pain in the arse. They, you know, they needed reseating, but, you know, they're doing the mixer tap for $75. Just carefully put my foot on there so I don't damage it. Still got plastic on it, so it's alright. I haven't screwed this batten off for the mixer because I don't exactly know how far back to put it yet. I'm not going to screw it off until I have the mixer in my hand. So when I got the mixer, I'll put the screws in that and I'll straighten it up and all that crap. So anyway, the blocks of wood to fill in these gaps. This is the other side. If I go back here, this is what we're looking at, alright? These blocks of wood. What I did was, I got a screw here and here, and that's effectively going into this stud, right? You can see the ends of those screws. So that's, you know, that screw, that's the end of it. Well, I've gone through this stud, on, you know, on this wall, and I've screwed them off. You probably can't see this. There's a second screw. I've screwed them here and here, and then you know, here and here into that stud. So it's, you know, there's a lot of strength in it. This is where I had a hand dryer, as you might remember in previous videos, but I don't need to take it out. I had a shaving cabinet here, but I'm not taking out these bits of timber because they're just extra points for people to put mirrors and stuff off. The cable, I've got to put a hole in that stud and, you know, thread it through. But it's looking quite good. This I had to plane the absolute shiz out of, you know, shit out of, I mean, idiot brain. I had to plane the shit out of this. It was 35mm, and I've probably taken 10mm off it at least. The plain side I've got facing this stud. I got to shim it out down the bottom because this stud's a bit warped. You know, because they used to have a bathtub here, which is why these studs are all checked in. Except that one, I did that for that pipe. And that's why the stud's a bit warped, so probably could do with a screw on this side down into the bottom plate too, because I don't think there's much holding it in. So I got to pack this out a little bit, just about, I reckon 3mm at the most, or maybe even less. I did run the sander up these studs slightly. And this one here, it's pretty obvious I've sanded it a bit because the base was just a bit tight. And I did the same thing here because these studs, they're pretty badly warped, like someone's left a whole pile of timber outside in the rain. So I might get the big level and sort of just stick them across these and make sure none of them stick out. If any of them stick out, like this stuck out quite a fair way. You make it harder for yourself. So things like this noggin, ideally I should screw that off because it's cracked. So it might even be worth chopping this out, but I think this plaster's probably attached to it. No, it's not. So it's probably worth putting another noggin underneath it. But that really needs the shit sort of cut off it or sanded off it or whatever, because that's just stupid. How can you put plaster on it? The plaster's going to be in the air. Like, how ridiculous is that? So it's not really rocket science, but even this stud here, it's a bit cupped. You can't really see it, but obviously it needs the sander put up it, because as you get further up the top, it's not bad, but when you get down here, it's sort of all over the joint. It's like sort of on an angle, like like that. So I'm gonna sand that off, because you'll never get plaster to go on that neatly. See, down the bottom here, it's okay. As you go up, you can sort of probably see it. I don't know how well you can see that, but this face is on a big angle. It's like, yeah, probably sticking out, I reckon, 5-10 mil on this edge here. So you just go through, and anything that sticks out much, like if it's a little bit like that, that's not going to matter. But if you got anything that's sticking out a mile, like this here, right? You look at that and that's sticking out 5 mil. That's not okay. Now they've planed that stud down because that face is all nice and smooth. But you really need to do the noggins too. You can't just do the stud only. It's just retarded. Probably shouldn't have said that word, but anyway. And same here. This is not acceptable. It's just too much. So it's worthwhile going through and making sure everything's good, because if it's not good, like this, these here, it's probably worthwhile going through and just taking a bit off it, because there's about 4 mil there. I'm not okay with that. Same with that up there. Probably can't see it on the camera, but I'm not okay with any of that. It's just too much. Now I know framing's not an exact thing. It doesn't really matter if it's a couple of mil out here and there, but it really matters a lot when you go to plaster if you got 5 mil, because it makes it so much harder to get the plaster nice and square and smooth and straight. That's why I went to so much trouble of this framing. Now I know these two studs here are a little bit, I had to actually rip it with the circular saw, which was very, very hard because I don't have a ripping guide. So it's a little bit more than it should be down the bottom. But, it won't matter anyway. I've got the hole for the waste cut. It's got a little cap thing which, yeah, I guess it hides it, and be a pain to clean though. I think this cap thing, I'd throw it away if it was mine, but I'm not going to be living here. I'm going to be selling this place. I've still got a couple of joists that I've got to reinstate. Some idiot cut through a joist there, and there's a joist under here that's cut through where the old, that toilet originally was installed in there. So, like I said, the shower was here. You've seen the videos. So, yeah, it's going quite well. I really should wind the video up because it's sort of going longer than I wanted it to. I've got to put a couple of those, those sort of style mini stops on this here basin, because the Australian standards in plumbing, I think they require you to have the mini stop taps there and there. I'm pretty sure you need to have an isolator on just about everything like that, because if one of these hoses springs a leak, you want to be able to shut them down and have water still. So yeah, if you're doing it at home, that's fine, but this is the standard these days. People expect mixer taps. That's a cheap ass mixer. A more expensive one's better. Definitely use silicone underneath this tap. Don't rely on the O-ring in the bottom of this to seal, because the hole in this basin is slightly bigger than it should be, or the tap's slightly narrower than it should be. So yeah, you definitely use silicone between here and the basin. By law, it's required to have a splashback. I think up to yay sort of high, like maybe 100 mil or something. I'm not really sure. I can't remember what the standards are. But you generally use 6-inch tiles, square kind of thing. So it's pretty straightforward. this little controller for the hot water service. It's degrees Celsius, by the way, so don't panic. You know, we could put it there, or maybe even there, if you could sort of reach it from inside that shower. The door is going to open against that wall, and there's probably about, you know, just under $1,000 worth of stuff for the shower. By the time you get waterproof plaster, you know, the waterproof membrane you got to put on the plasterboard by law, and on the floor underneath it. You know, you're up for $1,000 bucks. But hey, the base I got, you know, if I just sort of hinge it up, maybe if I just put this camera down, it's what they call a self-supporting base. I'm not going to pull it all the way out, but you can see that it's got this, you know, this pattern underneath it. It's not fiberglass, it's full plastic. It's an acrylic base, and it's kick-ass. This is a really nice base. It's $190. And what can I say? It's really worth the extra money. Like, you know, don't skimp on the base. Don't get a cheap one. You know, pay the $200 bucks for the base. It's the cheapest thing you can buy anyway, because, you know, the acrylic walls in the shower and the door, you know, they add up. They're real expensive. But you put sealant on all these, you know, ribs, and you just stick it down like that. So that's pretty much all you do. I'm going to put tile underlay down here. I'm going to run the belt sander over those joins in the board to smooth them right out, because the floor has to be dead level, and, you know, really ideally dead smooth. So I'm going to put tile underlay down after I repair this joist that some idiot cut through. Yeah, really smart. Put a hole through it. I'm going to, you know, patch that hole up, obviously. Put the underlay down. You know, I'm going to stand that up. Put sealant around all these, you know, these ribs, and I'm going to very, very carefully, you know, without getting sealant everywhere and without damaging the base, I'm going to hinge it down like that. Obviously without the plastic on, because it's pretty hard to get it out once it's you know, in place. But this is where I'm at. You know, I mean, you can see a few things that are not quite right. That stud in the middle of the frame there's not dead vertical, you know, on this axis. But this side, this is dead vertical. So all the studs are dead vertical where it counts. I'm being careful with that base, by the way. I'm not really putting too much pressure on it. So that's where I'm up to, guys and girls. Yeah. So this gives you an idea of what I've been doing, and believe you me, it's been a lot of work. You can see I've filled in these gaps too. The door's got a bolt to this, so I've used decent screws. You know, good heavy screws, high tensile screws. And I've smoothed out these studs a bit. So yeah, whatever's worth doing, it's worth doing well. Because like I said, you know, this noggin had like a 10mm or 5mm stick out compared to this stud. So, you know, it's definitely worth taking the extra time to make sure it's done properly. Now these little blocks, I've got to, you know, I've got to smooth them out a little bit. It actually looks worse than it is, but it's just, if you'll put the camera right in, see, it's not actually that bad, but ideally I want to take a couple of mil off. So it'll look good once it's done. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. And I've got some videos of the EB coming up, because that thing's cracked a cylinder head, as none of you would be aware of. So yeah, when you do a head on your car, actually, when you replace a gasket, you know, have it crack tested. Have it machined, have it crack tested, and have the valves pressure tested no matter what. If you don't have that head crack tested, do not reuse it. I don't care if it came off your car or whether you got it from a wrecker's, you get that head crack tested, because you do not want to be in the same predicament as I am, where I'm pulling the motor right apart again after 10,000 kilometers. So, you know, take a piece of advice. Heads, crack test, or not used again. Now cast iron, not as much of a problem as alloy, but any head reused from the wreckers, or, you know, reused from your car, crack tested every time, and stem seals. No half-assed jobs. Do it properly or don't do it at all, because, you know, you might find yourself doing the job all over again otherwise.